Buddy, this is Rydo, and we're back to another stream of Magic the Gathering Arena. Today is Friday, May 8th. Now, I'm not sure that the stream that happened on Wednesday went out. There was a 2 minute or so false start where I opened packs and then said I would come back. And then it seems, as far as I looked, like the hour or so video that I recorded didn't start streaming at all, and then at the last minute or so, that stream the backup recording of that stream also crashed. So it will just abruptly end when it re-airs as a rerun. So that's a bit of a lost episode. I definitely wasn't feeling well. I feel fairly alright now. I feel like I probably had a 24-hour flu or something. Not the big thing, as far as I can tell. Although flu-like symptoms are the big thing's symptoms, so that's part of the problem. That is a slight concern, and I am trying to monitor it. But yeah, we really didn't do a lot, and I wasn't feeling particularly good, and so you really didn't miss a lot there. So, as for today, since on Wednesday we didn't do a draft, it would be nice if we could do a draft, but it's not, I think, realistic, because we have this whole Pauper situation for Friday Night Magic. So, do we have any Pauper decks that we could even start from? This one here, New Deck 6, seems to only really be missing these cards. So without having to make any bigger change, I could just throw in 3 cards of anything effectively and just move on from that. Of course, you have to win, and that is the problem. Don't have any more of those to play. Yeah, there's some suckiness with Magic, I would say, in the fact that it just has too many styles to be played. Like, I get it. People who have been playing Magic since Alpha want to play Magic differently. Everybody's got their own little idea. I'd even go as far as to say that there probably is some just comic book nerd actually mentality that led to the Magic having so many different styles. But also, definitely also, some of these gameplay styles were created and proposed specifically by Magic Wizards of the Coast to just sell more cards. It seems like from my perspective, getting back into Magic, it seems like Commander is something that was naturally created by fans, where obviously Historic in Arena and Pioneer were definitely created by Magic, and obviously Standard is created by Magic. Pauper, I'm not sure if this was a fan creation or something that Magic tried to throw out there specifically. And I kind of get it too. Like, kids playing Pauper makes a lot of sense. That way you don't have kids that need to spend $200+ on a single deck to try to even be compatible. I assume, and I'm not even sure I understand the rules of Pauper so much, I assume Pauper is just commons and uncommons, and you are eliminating any rares and any mythic rares. So, yeah, I get the idea. I get the sentiment. You really could not play the opposite of something like Pauper. Like, where every card had to be a mythic rare. I don't think you'd get a good game out of that. Even if all mythic rares from even alpha were available, you would not have a lot of variety in that case, and that would be extremely expensive. And I don't think anybody is willing to raise the price of playing Magic above standard or championship level standard decks. Let's see. As for the accountability section, I've been rather distracted being sick, so there's not a lot I got done. There's actually very little news on Wednesday anyways, but there's quite a bit of news because, for better or worse, Microsoft did a presentation to show off what everybody seems to be describing as cutscenes and in-game cutscenes, while consistently saying that this is in-game gameplay, which seems to have irritated a lot of people. So that presentation was not very hype building. This very well may be the first of many instances in which, without the big stage, without the big budget productions, without all the tricks, all the flashy lights, all the fancy sound effects, the background noise, the mic'd audiences, without the wraparound screens that covers the entire theater, once all of that pomp and circumstance gets taken out of a video game presentation, maybe that stops a lot of people from subconsciously getting tricked into thinking that there's a lot more being shown than there actually is. So it might very well be a great thing in the long run if we get a lot of sort of crappy announcements of new games for the next year. If everybody just steps back and shows if everybody decides to stop being overhyped for games because all the advertising tricks are falling flat or not being able to be done, that would be great. Like, now is the perfect time for the video game community, video game playing community, as varied and not much of an actual community as it is. Now's a great time for video game players, I guess is a better way to describe it, to take a step back, look at the games they've already have, get on that backlist, look at old games, play those, seek out what you really want to play, and not just be drawn to play the next Madden game, or just drawn to play the next first-person shooter, unless that really is your passion. And even then, I would say, if your passion is first-person shooters, multiplayer only, evaluate yourself, I would ask, and make sure that you've tried some other games, and kind of spread your wings and try something different, try something old. Now is the best time probably in the entire life of video games for old games. Play that, and then I tap that and draw a card, and there's 6 damage. I did manage to play a couple hours, 2 maybe even 3 hours of Uru, and that put me about, I was saying, the 7-hour mark, and I've found and gone to every age / world / time frame for a world, which I still have never been able to really figure out. Myst doesn't really explain it over its entire series, whether these linking books go to different times or different worlds that happen just to look like it, whether these worlds are even real worlds to begin with. It kind of feels like there might be book creations that the linking books might be creating the worlds, or there might be a different kind of book that creates worlds, and then linking books are just the subway systems to get to those worlds. But yeah, before you do the 2 expansions, the main game of Uru is kind of small, but also if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to just wander around like crazy and wander around a very empty worlds and trying to find little hidden things to interact with, just desperately wandering around. Whereas you compare that to the Mist 1 game, you're on Mist Island, there's a puzzle within 5 feet of you at any point on Mist Island. It's nice and compact. So there's definitely some problems. There's also a lot of action things in Uru that just ruin the gameplay, as this feels like it's supposed to be for it was supposed to be an online game, an online Myst game, kind of like an MMO, so it doesn't make any sense when you're playing by yourself. And there's like one puzzle where you have to get over a rock wall, and so you're actually making a jet stream to project yourself over. You're making a jet stream to project yourself over the rock wall, and that's very action based. There is another place where there's a crack in the floor and you have to actually jump over the crack in the floor. Remembering that Myst games were originally just point and click. You would click somewhere and that's where you would go. Adding all this action and making it a first person / third person action game totally changes the feeling of it. And even when you play Abduction, you don't really do any of that at all. Abduction totally goes back to effectively a point and click element. The weirdest thing in their much later game of Abduction is that there is a laser on a minecart, and so this laser will destroy barriers, which is a little bit weird, because that then gets to the level of a key, and there really was only one key in the form of the final puzzle in Myst 1. But there were combination locks in Riven for sure. And I think combination locks are more of the style of the Myst universe, where it's something you know in your head, something that proves that you're intelligent, that lets you through a room, not an ability to find something or just have something on you. But yeah, I'm playing Uru, got to a 7-hour point, and at that point I decided it's time to use the walkthrough. I'd been to every world, I'd found less than half of all of the 7 handprints that you're supposed to find. A lot of the worlds, let's see, 60 standard decks, limited to commons and basic lands, so it's not even uncommons, it's just commons. Is Pauper. Interesting. I wonder if there's a gameplay style that includes Pauper, commons and uncommons, or what that would be called. You call that middle class or something like that. That would be a funny name to give it. Yeah, I really doubt too many people could beat Uru without using walkthrough. The whole game was designed to not really be defeated and beaten and solved by one player. Maybe I'm just dumb. There is always that possibility, but I think they really did design it so that multiple multiple people would be needed. Somebody would have to think one way to solve one puzzle, and then somebody would have to think another way to solve another puzzle. Another issue that really, really hurts Uru is you start the game in this tutorial world in Nevada, in the Nevada desert. It's a giant world that doesn't really need to exist, and it really gives you the feeling that the city of Denai is actually under the Nevada desert, which I don't 100% think is true, because there is a linking book that you use to get to the city of Bevan, which is an outskirt city of the Age of Denai. I've called it the city, but it's actually supposed to be a whole world. And when you look up in the sky in Bevan, you just see dark smokiness. You see a sky, though. You don't see stalactites and stalagmites. You don't see rocks. So it just seems like that issue is confused. And I will fully admit I'm not gaining any extra clarity, partially because I'm not willing to read a lot of the books. There's a decent amount of books around that are just not something I'm willing to read. I really wish those were audio logs. That is one way I would very easily remaster Uru in the first spot. You could fix Uru in two really easy ways: by having every book when picked up just play an audio file, and by having the daughter of Atris or some other companion character follow you around and act as a hint system. Just have them pre-programmed in their AI to walk to points of interest and look, and after a few minutes, and then just perhaps give some different perspective on some things. Also, just having an AI character at all helps you fix the loneliness that you run into. It's a lot less acceptable nowadays than it was in the past to have a character in first person perspective just wandering around an island. And even in that Mist 1, that was part of the story, is that you landed on this island, you were all alone, you didn't know what you were doing. In Uru, you are magically drawn to Nevada. You solve the puzzle. Somebody even tells you what your goal is, and so you kind of know what's going on. So there's no real reason to be alone. And they did not design the game in any way that you were supposed to be alone. There were supposed to be people all around you, maybe in different instances. I really have no idea how that game would have played, because you're either going to have a thing where you see other people but they can't interact with the puzzles, or you see every other people and they can interact with the puzzles, thus ruining the... Oh man, I don't even know how to win here. I've got to figure out how to actually win. So we've got to build a real deck. We gotta do something that we can actually succeed with, because this is not gonna cut it. Yeah. Maybe Uru would work if there was kind of like server resets and server rollbacks, so all the puzzles get reset to being unsolved every week or so, and people have to go and solve the same puzzles again. But really, as an online game, it would have only worked if they had just constantly added more content. Way more content than what you would get as like a quarterly expansion in something like World of Warcraft. You would just need puzzles out the wazoo coming out every day. And there's just no way that you could make a interesting puzzle that would take a week to solve when the thousands of people on your online service were all hammering at it, unless you just make it super annoying. Uru really needed some genius way to implement wait timers like you see in more modern games to stop people from doing things like that, and it just wouldn't work. And I think that's probably why, even though the Uru servers are open source now and all of that happened, there's no mod I've ever seen. Like, there's no attempts to add a ton of contents there. Even the basic general idea of taking all the puzzles from the other Myst games, I haven't seen that done. Like, and that would be the easiest thing in the world to do, is just take all of the Myst puzzles from Myst 1, take all the Myst puzzles from from Riven, from Myst 3, Myst 4, Myst 5, take all of those, program them into Uru, and then at the very least you have a 5 times bigger experience than what you would have with Uru. Because honestly, I'm not even sure, while the puzzles are different and that complicates it a little bit, I'm not even sure with 2 expansions if Uru Complete Chronicles really even is the same length of Riven. A lot of it has to do with the wandering around places element, which makes it worse. Like, it doesn't improve the game at all to allow the player to wander around. Alright, let's see. Ikora, white cards. See. Let's go and get rid of these. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. I kind of wish that there was an easier solution here. Like, really, it feels like there should be a button to just figure out how to start this deck. Alright. Let's try an Ikora deck, which means 4 of these. And it's not a bad idea. And we'll see if we can even find some mutate cards. You have a vigilance card, that's probably not bad. Here's the new pacifism. And a lot of these cards are the same or very similar things. Okay. I think that's the correct cards I want. So now let's see what else we can throw in here on top of this. We need 26 more cards. It also gets really hard to criticize something like Uru. I've said that with a lot of things, but yeah, when you're sitting in silence and you really don't have anything to say and really can't say anything, that becomes weird. It's a game that very much could make the player look stupid, and very possibly I am just dumb on that matter, and I am just missing something very basic. But there is also some definite weirdness. Like, there's caves that are dark, and my only hope is that the reason they were dark is because I didn't have this device called the key, which I wanted to mention. Like, I started to say, you start the game in that Nevada desert when really you should be starting the game in a very specific area that gives you the key. There is really no reason for that tutorial section in the Nevada desert to exist other than to be a tutorial section and be a little bit smaller and less complicated than the place that you get the key. So they either needed you to find the key, spelled K-I, device, which lets you take screenshots and mute the audio, and seems to also have a directional marker ability that has yet to been implemented, as far as I can see, as I just got it. So either in the Nevada section where you have that start point, you needed to have found the key, or you needed to have teleported from the temporary section back into the from the tutorial section back to the location where you get the key. But then that ruins, I think, their core idea of your home hub island a little bit, and they want you to go to the home hub island. So most players, I'm not even gonna try and be generous here. I think most players have a high chance of wandering around for 5+ hours in the game trying to solve puzzles without the key, not realizing that the key really is needed for some of that, and the game is not really good about telling you that you need it at all, or where to get it even if you did need it. Plus it also does a pretty terrible job about making it feel like the key is something that was from the first expansion, and it kind of isn't. It's used in the first expansion somewhat, obviously, but there is, I suppose, a fair argument to be made that the first expansion also doesn't do a good job of telling players not to play the first expansion. Alright, that's about as good as I think it's gonna get. Like, the both expansions do a bad job about telling the player to play the main game first. There's no gaining or linearity there. And I get it, if people had bought the expansions individually and they had like a new save file, then they just wanted to jump into it, that's great. But the expansions add a lot of noise, in the sense that if you had just the original version of Uru, you would have had 4 books you could have gone to, 4 linking books at the start on your Real 2 island, which is your little home hub world. Seriously, did I not get any. I don't think I have any land. I don't have any land. Scoop. Like, I literally can't play anything. Why did it not warn me on that? Why? Why in the world would the game let me enter a deck that has no land? That is some grade A bull. And that explains certainly why we were running into problems. Yeah, that is some just total ridiculous. So let's just get rid of 3 more. One there is probably fine, one there is probably fine, and one there is pretty fine. So yeah, I'm hoping that the key lights up these caves in some way, that you can actually get through the caves in a fairly easy pattern. Otherwise, I kind of don't know how to get through these dark caves without just kind of wandering around in complete blackness. And turning up the brightness is not going to help. It is just complete blackness. I've managed to get through one cave, but then it just takes you to another cave. There is this, for lack of a better place, church location I found in Uru that seems to have a lot of solutions just all in one place. Again, either you would have the key that lets you take screenshots at that point, and see, I was pressing F5 to take screenshots before that point. It wasn't popping up an error or anything. Or you would have multiple players and have one player describing what they're seeing in this church in these stained glass solutions to people in other ages, which is what the Uru Live experience I imagine was supposed to be. I imagine the key either didn't exist at all. They also give you a journal. Turns out the journal does not auto-populate with anything. It's literally just something you click on and then you start typing away in it so you can make notes. These aren't bad features. These would be great features if they were in Myst 1, but they just kind of replace what people were doing on pen and paper in the real world, and but they're not bad features. They're just kind of poorly implemented, and they kind of fail to supplement against the weird, more action-based, more general people numbers-based puzzles. Like one of the puzzles, I found what seems to be a prison that has 6 panels that have weight on them, and almost certainly in Uru Live 6 people would have had to stand on these platforms, or some people would have had to stand on the platforms where other people wouldn't have to stand on platforms to open the prison doors. To make that doable as a single player game, they've opted to have the world have a bunch of bones and rocks in that area, which is fine. But then the problem is you see these counter levers through the prison doors that seem to indicate the pattern to open the prison doors, and it doesn't seem like it works. So either I am doing something totally wrong, or the counter levers that are being shown have nothing whatsoever to do with the combination, and I am supposed to just brute force 6 panels. Is it really 6 even? No, it's 7. So 2 to the power of 7, that's 128 possible different combinations if I'm doing the math, remembering the math right. That's a lot of brute forcing to have to do. Target artifact or enchantment, scry. Let's go and just cycle. Can't play that yet. So yeah, that doesn't sound very fair or fun. There was also a point where you were supposed to jump on a platform. You could literally see the handprints, and the handprints are the things you're supposed to find. You're supposed to find 7 handprints in each world, at least in the main game of Uru, and click on them. One of them's on a platform. You have to jump on the platform. I go to jump on the platform. I clip through the floor and fall basically to my death, although in actuality it really just teleports you back to your hub Real 2 island. There's a whole bunch of jargon in the game that doesn't get said out loud, so it becomes a problem. Yeah, in fact, with the exception of a couple talking characters at the beginning of the game, I don't know if there's any spoken dialogue in the game at all after that point. There probably is. There probably is another cutscene or two at the very end of each section, the main game and then the 2 expansions. But you're alone in silence for the rest of it. In all fairness, I did know what I was signing up for with Uru, and I have played it, I think, to completion before. But it is kind of the worst of the Myst games, just because it is so far out from what Myst was. It also is a great example of the early ambitions of Cyan that failed. It took them, like, it really messed them up for a decade making Uru, and their new game Firmament might go the way of Uru. One hopes it doesn't, but it very well might be a game that tries to be too actiony, that tries to feel too different from a Cyan game. Maybe with Abduction already changing up the feel of what Cyan games are now. Now the new Cyan, with a new generation of programmers in charge, are trying to do something different anyways. That might not be as big of an issue. But we're getting closer to being able to actually play a game here and win. Yeah, and I wanted to do a draft today, and it's just not gonna happen. I guarantee you this Friday Night Magic Pauper just trying to get 2 victories here will be a nightmare. And I'm, for the week, far behind the number of victories you would want to have gotten. Like, there's definitely been days when I've only gotten a few victories. Part of that is Magic's own interface's fault. Like, it gets network troubles. And I know we're all having network troubles right now. But when it locks you into this situation where you can't really do anything, you're because it's just running up a clock and it won't give up. If I'm just playing with my mouse, which is usually how I'm playing, and my keyboard is across the room, trying to hit Control-Alt-Delete to get around that situation, it's not really worth it. Particularly if one's sick or just in pain and doesn't want to hurt their back by standing up and walking across the room for a stupid card game. Yeah. Well, as far as Uru, I've talked a lot about it. I've probably talked about way more than I should have about it. We're kind of on the full path of we're kind of on the full path of just using a walkthrough. Like, I don't think I'll be doing anything else other than using a walkthrough. I could attack, but can I activate this? No. Yeah. I'll probably be in full walkthrough mode and just finish Uru. I need to do some scheduling, I need to do some uploading, I need to do a lot of things, and I'm just forever constantly falling further and further behind. So let's start going through the news. There was nothing I even remember from Wednesday, so as far as that lost footage goes, like, I don't think there was anything of big news or any game that came out that you're likely to miss. Maybe we can rebuild a deck here and see if we can put in some more low-level characters instead of high-level characters. Just like these 4, for instance. I can't read that. And let's do that. And then let's see, we'll get rid of that one, and then 2 of that, and then 1 of those, and then down to that, and then down to that. And yeah, see if that improves anything. So let's start going through the news. There is still a risk, I suppose, that I would just have a sudden loss of energy. That seems to be the case when you're sick, or when I'm sick at least, is that I'll just all of a sudden have a drop in like blood sugar and just be like, oh, all my energy is drained. I also took a over-the-counter sleeping pill I accidentally took 2, and that seemed to have done something weird to my sleeping patterns. Either that was the cause, or just my back in general being the cause. And so now I'm having a lot of dreams, which I usually don't remember having dreams at all. And and so I am having this situation where it feels like I'm having a dream, then I'm waking up and rolling over for a second, falling back asleep, having a dream, waking up, rolling over, falling back asleep. It's rather annoying because it feels like you're sleeping for potentially 15-20 hours, but more than likely what you're doing is having a 10-minute dream at most, and then waking up, rolling over, and sleeping for another 10 minutes. But yeah, that's annoying, and certainly not a desirable outcome from a sleeping pill. The idea would be to sleep all the way through the night without waking up, not encourage the opposite. But it wouldn't be the first time something has worked the opposite way it says it was supposed to work for me. Moving on, TechCraft has an article. A Fortnite Party Royale Kirby cameo is an awfully strange crossover. So I guess they're showing this as if this is supposed to be Kirby. Here. I don't know if that is just that somebody is drawing something, or if Kirby really is going to show up in Fortnite Party Royale, which isn't the Party Royale the pacifist section anyways, where you're not going to be fighting in Fortnite at all. Yeah. Looking at this, it seems like this is probably just in the video some accidental inclusion or some hint, secret like Easter egg. I have some questions as far as what I'd really want to believe that Kirby is coming to Fortnite in anything other than the Switch version. I totally would believe if Kirby shows up in the Switch version, and only the Switch version. I guess it would then kind of just boil down to, is Nintendo potentially doing something really different? I don't know why they'd throw Kirby out there. It's not like they really care too much about Kirby, but you would almost think that they would throw out Samus Aran from Metroid first, because they really don't care about that. But yeah, we might be seeing a lot more Nintendo things in the Fortnite party mode, and maybe in Fortnite in general. Fortnite is effectively printing money right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo wants to get in on that action. Don't want that one, or that one. Gamma Sutra has an article. Animal Crossing New Horizons has sold 11.77 million copies in under 2 weeks. So Animal Crossing doing very well. Although there is kind of a plethora of complaints about how Animal Crossing is designed for multiple players and multiple people who are sharing Switches, and just an inability to let people have their own separate islands. And I think 2 weeks in now, we are going to hit the point where either you are a hardcore fan of You're either going to be a hardcore fan of Animal Crossing and play it kind of religiously, or you're going to be a fair weather fan and you're going to be fairly done with Animal Crossing, even though people still have reasons to have that extra time. Like, if this whole pandemic thing hadn't happened, I would suspect you're going to have at best 40% of people who bought Animal Crossing before the summer still playing Animal Crossing by the end of the summer. Alright, well, do I want to attack now? Or do I want to wait? Because this guy could block one guy. And this guy could block one guy. Which means probably this and this would get through. So let's just not attack. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Nintendo praises Switch momentum as lifetime sales eclipse 55 million units. I even saw a picture on Reddit showing that some Switches have even made it back to the shelves. So the run on Switches seems to have slightly lowered. Yeah, that didn't help. I guess I should have attacked. But we're much closer to actually getting victory here. And I don't think I know how to make a small tweak to this to improve. Pauper sucks. It really does. There's just not enough variety there. Unless Pauper is all common cards, not just standard common cards, which, okay, even if that was the case, it still kind of sucks on Magic Arena compared to playing that in a store, because Magic Arena only has the standard cards, a small selection of non-standard cards, and historic cards. But yeah, this isn't particularly fun, and it's not well balanced as far as I'm feeling, and it kind of is insulting just to every second thinking the only reason you're playing this is either because they're telling you you have to play it to get a reward on Magic Arena, or because you're so broke that you can't build even a decent deck with uncommons. Which honestly, I think if you just spent, let's go generous. Let's say if you just spent $100 on booster packs of the most recent expansion and just got commons and uncommons somehow, which is not even possible to my understanding, you still would probably be able to build a better deck than a Pauper deck. At least something that does something more interesting. And it's not like commons do nothing. I could almost see an argument where you had a faceless game, where there are just no activated abilities. It is just your toughness and your power, and that's it. And any activated abilities on the face of the cards are just ignored completely. That would be an easy way to learn the basics of Magic without getting too into the complications of Magic. That's something I think would work better than playing Pauper. If Pauper is intended to be for new players, which almost certainly it has to be. I doubt anybody who's even been playing for a few months would want to play Pauper very often, maybe once in a while. just to change things up. But fairly obviously, you can kind of tell I'm hating it. Moving on, we have a game on Steam that's a bunch of Asian letters and called Rebirth. This is looking like a Chinese RPG game. It is wider screen, not full 16:9. It's early access, English is not included. It's selling for $18.74. So we had a brief second there where it felt like it felt like the cheap Chinese games weren't getting listed as often, but seems like we'll probably still see a few of those. I got linked to an article here from Pocket Gamer. You can lead a resistance against the Nazis through the darkest of times, now out for iOS and Android. I think we've seen this game already, so I don't want to get to the point where I feel like I'm hyping it. This guy has lifelink, so if I don't put an end to him, which I should have done, he's gonna win more and more life. But see, he's going for this mutate maneuver. And that lets me now start piling on the damage, but I don't know if I can pile on the damage enough to make up for everything he's done. Next we have a game on Steam here called Dark Light, which is already mixed. I did come across a game that I saw that was on my following list. I cannot name it. It was probably a pretty old game that was added to the following list, in the sense that it was probably added almost 6 months ago. We are getting to the point where following a list cleanup starts to make a little bit more sense. So I just removed it. This game, Dark Light, looks like it is too dark of a game for its own good. Looks like it's a shooter, platformer, Metroidvania game. It's early access. It's $13.99. It's English, Chinese, Japanese, and then Chinese again. Yeah. See, the game doesn't even load after the title screen is one negative review. I don't see anything here that really makes me want to put this on the follow list, and that this is being particularly cruel too, in all fairness, like, because I have been fairly lenient. Oh man, I'm gonna lose. Well, might as well do damage while we can. I've been fairly lenient on games, and probably in the past I would have said put this on the follow list. There's nothing really wrong with this UI. There's nothing really wrong with a lot of the imagery other than it's dark. But I feel like if it comes out in early access and you've already got 17 people giving it a mixed review, you've shot yourself in the foot. So I'm just gonna ignore it, and if it becomes a lost gem, forgotten gem, I guess so be it. Next we have a game on Steam called a bunch of Asian characters in Banner of the Maid, which is rated very positively. It is a turn-based strategy, seemingly kind of in a French Revolution style of outfits, I'd guess, with the little anime inspired art style. So it might be something here. feels like this might have been a cell phone game that was ported to PC, but it's widescreen. Doesn't look too bad. Seems to have a love for cleavage in a lot of screenshots. Set in the French Revolution, yeah. So $16.99. A free DLC and then a $4.99 DLC. It's English, then full audio in Chinese. So this is made by a Chinese company. I would guess by the language, but they did their job well, and this doesn't look terrible. Other than the fact that it is a strategy placement turn-based RPG game, which means it could be fairly short and fairly boring. But I'll put it on the follow list. Like, it's not a bad idea to try and highlight the good games coming out of China when there are good games that come out of China. Like, I would much prefer to lift up the Chinese video game market than to have to constantly just poop all over it. But yeah, you kinda never know. Where you can, where the next big thing is gonna come from. So I probably should have played this first, because I have 2 Charmed Strays. Plus it also has lifelink. So yeah, that was really dumb mistake on my part. The only reason to have played this first is if you were afraid of this guy being able to kill this guy with a spell, which is a fair concern, but probably not enough to justify playing the way I did. We may actually get a victory here, now that we're 8 points up. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called No Weight Hero, which looks like it's a card-based battling game that seems to work with a positioning system, which definitely feels a little bit complicated. Also, it doesn't seem like it's turn-based at all, so you're playing the cards, I think, in real time, from what I can tell. So it does kind of feel like you're doing 3 different things. Well, it says turn-based combat. That didn't feel like turn-based combat from what I was saying. Let's see, boss. Yeah. Well, this is $9.99 and it's English and Japanese. I'll put this on the fall list because that definitely is a different style of gameplay that we don't see a lot of. I don't know if it's a good style of gameplay per se. There is definitely an argument that could be made that overly complicating things and not just sticking with a basic 1 or 2 gameplay mechanics is a mistake. This is an instant, so let's go and attack and see if this guy will block that guy, which I thought he would. There we go. Next we have a game on Steam called End of War 1945, which looks like an asset flip first person shooter. Looks like a PlayStation 2 game. Like, I don't even know if you really, I guess I still would call it an asset flip game. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything here of interest. It's early access, it's $14.99, it's English only. These military games in particular, rather uninteresting. Okay, yeah, we'll just let that happen. And win. Finally got a victory. I hope I'm a realistic example when playing these of just how much time it can take. When I was playing Hearthstone, I always had that feeling that maybe I just really was bad at Hearthstone and I wasn't showing what an average player's experience would be, even though I was getting close to 50% win ratios. So I kind of feel like the same issue is here too, where an average player is going to potentially have to play 4 games or more to get 2 victories in a game like this, and when you're limiting them to building a specialized deck and spending that extra effort to figure out what kind of deck will actually win, and then you're limiting them to using much fewer cards than what you normally would have, it just becomes extra burdenous. And this doesn't feel like you're playing against bots, which also becomes an issue for sure, because if I was playing against bots, I feel like the bots would just automatically concede a little bit easier. Next we have a game on Steam called Data Dream, which looks like it is kind of a surreal line runner game, or just a combination of a bunch of surreal imagery. It's a little too crazy looking, frankly, and it's not really highlighting what the game actually is. Or it seems like you're running and attacking things and being attacked by things, but then at a certain point you're also in the ship, and yeah, seems like your attacks are mostly based around running and kind of ground slamming. Let's not block. Data Dream is $17.99 discounted, and it's English full audio. So they're saying it's like Abduction. These comparisons still particularly bad. So yeah, I don't think Data Dream makes it to the fall list. Next we have a game on Steam called Tonight We Riot. There was a game that was clearly like a political troll game that I skipped over, something called Libtard something or other. Like it was just so obvious that it wasn't anything of interest that I didn't even open it. This is probably another game like that. Seems like the graphics look pretty bad, and it seems like you are just playing some kind of infinite shooter, side scroll shooter game against. They're calling it a beat 'em up. Maybe that is the best way to describe it. I'm losing words as I'm trying to figure out the right way to describe it. Let's see, enchant creature can't attack. Attack here and attack here. And we'll decide if he wants to sacrifice a couple of people to kill my guys. The pixel graphics, the overworld art here, the emphasis on the overworld map makes it feel like they're probably, this is something sort of like Castle Crashers, but even worse. It's $14.99, which is way too expensive. They are comparing it to Castle Crashers, and it has a bunch of languages on it, and it has 20 weapons, which is, I would say, barely enough. Alright. Start attacking with these. So yeah. I don't think tonight Riot deserves to be on the follow list. And apparently I did open this. So Libtard the Satire game is a political troll message, almost certainly. Early access $4.99, English only. Yeah, I won't go into speculation that this is being made by some foreign country to make fun of the United States, because there's no proof to that effect, but that is always a possibility. Or it could just be actual political speech from actual United States citizens, or political speech from non-United States citizens. I guess that's also an option. Let's see. Can we win here? Was that the right move with this first strike? Gamatsu has an article here. A role-playing billiards game called Lianhai Billiards Club has been announced for PC. It's coming out summer 2021. Seems like you're playing pool, but then you kind of have what looks like some kind of bad Korean animation characters. Apparently it's Chinese characters. This is better than this is. This person doesn't even have a face that's showing. But I don't really know. Yeah, I can see her eyes and her nose and her mouth just barely. That the shading and the detail work here is pretty bad. I don't know the point of that. Like, trying to combine what is effectively a visual novel element to a billiards game. You almost for certain know that the billiards game is not going to be that good, and I doubt too many people that want to play virtual billiards are overlapping in the category of people that want to play visual novels. I could see an interesting visual novel series around some of those sports, like billiards or bowling or things like that, that don't get done very often in anime stories, because I don't think billiards or bowling are particularly popular in Japan and haven't been for quite a while. Bowling at one time was very popular all around the world, but that was quite a few years ago. Probably about three decades, I would guess, 3 or 4. But much like how Princess 9, the anime that is about baseball, really doesn't have anything to do too much about baseball, or more recently the ice skating anime really doesn't have as much to do about the ice skating part of it. These stories are designed around the idea of introducing characters that have interesting goals. They're not designed around the idea of people being particularly interested in playing the games or seeing the games played. So yeah, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Dragon Banner, which looks like it's an attempt at being kind of like a Minecraft clone. maybe with some tower defense elements. They're saying it's an RPG, and I guess at the core of it, Minecraft is an RPG. Seems like you're building up a base and fighting enemies. It's $16.99 English full audio. Yep, I really don't see anything here special. There is a lot, I think, to be said about the graphics of Minecraft, and even though they haven't majorly improved or changed, that there's definitely a nice experience and a consistent experience with what you're looking at always in Minecraft, and it's become very familiar. So people like the way Minecraft things look, and even when you look at like Roblox or other games that are similar to Minecraft, they feel different. And it's not until you get to something like Fortnite that you I would say Fortnite looks rather different while still having some building mechanics like Minecraft, although Fortnite also is very not focused on being a Minecraft-like. At least it wasn't until the peaceful mode. We'll have to wait and see if the peaceful mode in Fortnite really doesn't just boil down to playing being similar to playing Minecraft in peaceful mode. The only one thing I would say that Fortnite has yet to do is just have the equivalent of creepers, have some AI enemies run around. And I wouldn't be surprised if some mode comes out that adds that. Well, none of these look like they were new cards. Let's see how many of those actually filled out a collection. This was new. This was the fourth one. This was the second one of that. This was the first one of that. Interesting. This was new, and this was new. So we got some new cards. A mythic rare card, which is nothing to shake a stick at. But also, these cards seem to be kind of all over the place as far as what they are from. Some of them are Theros Beyond Death, some of them are Throne of Eldraine, some of them are Ikora. So that might be part of the issue, certainly with my lack of success, is that we're going to play the green test to get the daily quest done, is that there simply may be not enough rares and mythic rares from Ikora and Throne of Eldraine to buff up a deck, and just trying to build a deck with Ikora cards alone may not be good enough. Moving on, Kimetsu has Ninjala delayed to June 24th, no longer coming out May 27th. Also, I had heard Ninjala is going to be a little bit more of a battle pass free-to-play game than, or at least you can pay to win type game, than I had hoped it to be. So that kind of sucks. But we'll see. We'll wait to give final judgment until Ninjala actually comes out, which might be a while because the Tokyo Game Show 2020 physical event is canceled due to the pandemic. A digital event is now planned. There'll be more information will be announced starting late May. So this could be a major affecting part as far as Japanese games coming out this year in total. This year and kind of next half of next year, if not longer. We're not anywhere close to the point where we should just assume that anything next year is going to be canceled, but there's as the months go on, there's a possibility of that also. I had talked about in a previous stream, my fear is that Japanese companies may just decide not to release their Japanese games at all if they can't really sell them in their own company, in their own country, because it has been a fairly consistent attitude of Japanese companies to really only care about domestic sales. They always have to partner up, or at least they feel the need that they have to partner up. It's not like China. Japanese companies could definitely make their own publishing companies and distribution companies in Europe and the United States and North America and all of that. They don't have to partner up with a distributor, but they don't want to do that because then they'd have to have foreigners on their payroll, and they don't want that. I hate to use the word xenophobic, but Japanese are economically pretty xenophobic. They really only care about the bottom line in their own country. They really only care about the sales in their own country. They really love to gouge the people in Japan and charge them hundreds of dollars for a game. So like some games probably do sell for $120 where they're selling for $60 everywhere else. So if all of a sudden the pandemic stops them from having the Tokyo Game Show, which is the biggest show for Japanese games, and it is the place where all Japanese companies show off their games first and foremost, my fear is that they will just decide to not release the games until they can release them in Japan. Also, if the country of Japan is being ravaged by a pandemic and people are just not buying the games, they're just not capable of buying the games, then you also run into that same issue where they may very well go, well, we could sell this in Japan, but nobody can afford to buy it, or nobody can go out to the shops to buy it, or we can't get it on the shelves, or so they may just say no. They may just put everything in a holding pattern for a year or longer, which would hurt the video game industry quite a bit. Like, if you lose Japanese games, you lose a lot of Asian players. You lose, I think, half of video game players worldwide anyways. Never underestimate how many Asians are out there, or how many people are out there playing visual novels. That alone, like, that is a huge amount. And it does potentially create this scenario where the video game industry might just get ceded to Western game developers, and then you have people like EA and Activision Blizzard and 2K all making just military first-person shooters, which decreases the appeal and decreases the variety. One thing Japanese games can always be described as being different, and different is always appreciated in a world where there's a lot of clones of other kinds of games. But right now, we don't have any real evidence that that's going to happen. If anything, we have equal evidence that they're still going ahead with just digital events. And it very well may be a case that Japanese companies are even better at adapting to digital events than Western companies, because their internet in Japan is probably a lot better, and presentations and digital presentations have been going on for a while in Japan anyways. They haven't been particularly good, but they've been existing. So yeah, this green test is not going well. We've cast one green spell. Are creature spells not spells? I would thought creatures were spells. This could take forever if creatures aren't spells. Because it's not like this instant spell here is marked as a spell. So this should be a spell too. Theoretically, in the idea of magic, you are a planeswalker, and you are casting spells to summon creatures, magical creatures that one assumes have no life or existence outside of being summoned, and thus really don't create any moral dilemmas in the fact that they seem to be killed when you're done with it. If anything, I guess the Pokemon card game is the cruelest one, because unless somewhere in the instructions of the Pokemon card game the assumption is that those are real Pokemon that you're making pass out and faint. I guess if you just look too deep though into any of it, it'll drive you crazy. Can't do that yet. No attack in turn. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Blood Rage Digital Edition brings the fight to Steam. So, a game called Blood Rage, which I haven't ever heard of, is being hyped up and advertised by TechRaptor. It doesn't... It seems almost like a real-time strategy game. Like, it looks a little weird. And I guess Digital Edition probably implies that there's a board game called Blood Rage. And it seems like you're playing with like card-based gameplay, and then there's just some animations on top of it. And the animations do look fairly nice. But honestly, I also feel like the board games at this point have burnt me out. I've tried to play several of them and not found them particularly interesting, and I think I've covered enough of the ones that are frankly even worth mentioning. Jeez, cannot do anything. Not yet, at least. The new era, it seems, of putting out demos seems to continue, in that we have a game called One Dreamer Prologue, which looks like a pixel graphics free-to-play point-and-click adventure, for lack of a better term. And that's what I guess it would be. It is a demo. It says it's English full audio. It has 9 achievements. It's weird that demos can have achievements. And the actual game, One Dreamer, is going to be available in 2020. Yep. I am still sticking with my decision, though, that to not put these demos, these prologue games, in the fall list. It's a little early for this to be a reaction to the pandemic, but I kind of come to think of it, I kind of wonder if the reason why we're seeing a lot of demos for games is because people don't want to release the actual game, so they're delaying the game and then putting out demos in their stead. So they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, which is an interesting idea, certainly. And it might really work. It might make a whole new era of people releasing demos and finding more value in releasing demos. Honestly, I don't think demos need to exist anymore. Like, And frankly, I don't think demos needed to exist for the most part ever, since like shareware days. It made sense when a game had to be mailed off and there was just this long delay. But now the fact that any service whatsoever could, I'm not saying that they all do, but could easily just have a 2-hour refund policy, no questions asked. I feel like that you're just in a better position at that point to simply just have your game out, and then if people really don't like it, they have 2 hours to get that refund. And that system forces a lot of game developers into a situation where they have to have a demo whether they want it or not. There's not been a case where anybody has successfully been able to opt out of the Steam 2-hour no questions asked refund policy. That has just been the law of the land, and it has worked fairly well. If only I could destroy this, it'd be nice. But I could mutate onto this one still if I can get some more land, and I've got like 3 of these growth cycles, so I could attack, but I would need trample first. That's what I'd want, so I want to get that on the field, so I can't really do anything. I could attack with that, but that's not the right move either. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article. Riot wants to curb toxicity in Valorant without putting the burden on targeted players, which I assume means they want to enact some penalty on toxic players without making the targeted players actually report them, which seems like it's probably just at a certain point going to be speech policing by the third party in the conversation. Honestly, just reading this title and going no deeper, because I'm not going to waste the time to read any further, because I'm not going to play Valorant anyways, and I don't play most online games, so it doesn't really matter to me. There's something there I definitely don't agree with. And I think most people don't agree with that concept of police speeching between two people. If somebody is such a wimp that they are getting called names or harassed in a video game, and they can't go into the report button and report them, or then no action should be taken to help them, frankly. At a certain point, you just have to let the little baby birds fly or fall out of the sky and die. Like, you just can't helicopter parent or try and help all of these people that much. It's just not realistic, and it's silly to even try. On the other issue, you can't guarantee that these aren't two agreeable parties who are joking amongst themselves using coarse language that the third party doesn't agree with. It is very often the case that people are just joking around, having private in-jokes or private in-conversations, and a third party has no reason whatsoever to step in and go, now you boys behave, now you kids behave, don't use those naughty words, don't say those mean things. That kills the fun. And on a bigger note, it seems very much like all of these game developers are just obsessed about curbing the quote-unquote toxicity in video games that seems to not really have increased any in decades, and seems, if anything, to still just be at the same amount it always has been, which is to say a fine amount, an average amount, an amount you would run into just in your day-to-day life dealing with people. Even if it was a high amount, it very likely is a situation like what happens in a lot of junior high schools and later grades in elementary schools, where the kids are going through hormonal changes and they're aggressive because of that, and the teachers are aggressive because they're going through menopause or menopause half the time themselves. So so there is kind of, in a lot of schools, this just generational, year after year level of aggression, because nobody wants to be there, nobody wants to listen to anybody, nobody wants to do anything. But there's really no way to really fix that, like, not until you address major issues that you can't really address, because a school effectively is a place where a person has to go to learn, and if somebody doesn't want to go, they're not going to be happy about it. A school effectively is a place that has where kids going through hormonal changes have to be around other kids. Until we can invent brain implants that just teach kids, there's no solution there. I don't think there's a solution there to whatever level of toxicity, if there is any real level of toxicity. I would say there probably is some small level of it in video games. But I think a lot of these game developers are wasting their time and they're wasting their energy. And it's not like the games are getting better because of it. Like, there's yet to been any story even tried to be put out that says a game has been majorly improved due to the draconian, authoritarian moderation of the chat. Like, no, it's been the exact opposite story. One of the most beloved multiplayer games was Halo, the Halo series. What is Halo most known for, other than being a good first-person shooter? It's most known for people teabagging each other. If Halo came out today, there would almost certainly be major articles talking about how that game is toxic and how it shouldn't be allowed to exist. But yeah, thank goodness Halo came out earlier. It could also be that a lot of these game companies are just paying lip service to these ideas and they're not really doing much of anything. I kind of wish that was true, but it doesn't really feel like that is true. It does feel like there's definitely people who are just in that California groupthink mentality that are going to too many GDC conferences, talking amongst too many of their SJW mainstream video game journalist friends, and getting these agendas shoved in their heads so much that that's all they can talk about. But yeah, that really just boils down to my opinion, I suppose. As somebody who doesn't play multiplayer games, I would really prefer to hear from somebody who does just very consistently play multiplayer games and see how they run into it. Because I don't even watch streamers, honestly, that play multiplayer games too much. Except for people playing Minecraft, and people playing with people on Minecraft seem to be completely 100% cool. Like I've not seen any major instances of griefers on Minecraft servers that are run by big people. At least I imagine regular people that play Minecraft that let regular random people in sometimes do run into griefing. Oh, did I literally just lose? I literally just lost. That was dumb. How did this get tapped? I guess maybe it was tapped already. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Pokemon Go Pokecoin overhaul is in testing. Gyms won't be the center of Pokecoin in the proposed overhaul. I don't even know what Pokecoins are. I guess they're a currency in Pokemon Go. But having never played it, I would assume that they are probably the premium currency in Pokemon Go, and that they're going to try and make the game a little bit less expensive. 8 more green spells that need to be played. They need to fix their verbiage there. It needs to not say spells, it needs to say instant or sorcery cards, instant or sorcery cards, because as I understand it, as the game itself told me, creatures were spells, but maybe in general gameplay of Magic, creatures are not referred to as spells, and I'm just confused. But that does definitely make me want to re-roll that daily quest going forward. It is a bit of a catch-22. I have complained about Magic often saying just play this many cards of this color and then not emphasizing any new mechanics, for instance like cycling. It would make a lot of sense to have a daily quest that says play 5 cycling cards, because that's a brand new Ikra concept. But then I'm also complaining that instant and sorceries, which are old style of cards, are being a requirement, or acting as a requirement. Let's see. Can't play that yet. Go ahead and ruin his strategy. Next, we have a game on Steam called Alone Journey, which looks like it's a platformer. Looks kind of like a student project. It's pretty empty as far as enemies and has a very basic life meter, and is slightly better than a standard looking pixel graphic MS Paint game, but only barely better. $6.59 discounted, English only. There's nothing here to impress. Alright. Go and put that on the field. I guess we're just waiting for a trample, because that would be the thing that would help us. TechRaptor has an article here. The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners hasn't launched in all regions yet. I believe, again, this is the VR game that was coming out for the PlayStation VR, not the other Walking Dead game that they were suing for. So, yep. Neither one of the 2 most recent Walking Dead games have been specifically well designed as far as trying to get out and catch people's attention. And I think at this point The Walking Dead as a series is kind of done. Like, I don't think that there's anything more to be said about it. The TV series is still going as far as I understand it, but the comic book series is done and the fandom around it is done. So I guess Chris Hardwick is going to have to find a new thing to do, which he is running that game show, The Wall, and he's probably talking about several other shows, but I guess TNT itself would have to be the one that would really do a good job of bringing out something new. Up to one blocks it. Well, do I want to cycle? Or do we want to attack? This is gonna do 6 damage. I feel like I should cycle. Come on, game, do something. Well, while it decides what it wants to do, Rebel Inc. Escalation Campaign update debuts all new gameplay. Rebel Inc. being the sequel from the, well, not the sequel, but the next game from the developer of Plague Inc. And you can see from these graphics that there's a little bit more visually there than Plague Inc. Plague Inc. I don't know if there's really much more you can do with it without drastically changing the interface, which is exactly what they're talking about doing, is trying to improve the interface, at least for cell phones. They kind of would have to make a Plague Inc. 2 and just like double the gameplay mechanics or do something very different. Okay. TechRaptor has an article. Cannibal cuisine lets you cook with spices, traditional ingredients, and magic. Although, by the name, it almost seems like you'd be cooking with humans too. This looks more like a mobile game than anything of any real interest. And it feels like you're kind of playing up the weirdness of exotic cannibals that don't really exist in large numbers in Africa. But I can't really say I'm too upset by that. That has long since been a cliche, and it really is just a cliche fiction in the way that a lot of the British Empire brought back a bunch of fictional stories exoticizing the Africa and the Middle East and China, and they've just become culturally relevant at this point. So I can't say I hate those as concepts, as long as you just know that they're not real and they are not going to be effective propaganda against most people. Like if anybody legitimately thinks that there's a bunch of, that all of Africa is a bunch of people, a bunch of cannibals with bones in their noses, that they're really, really dumb. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Steam revamps and improves traffic reports for developers, which I guess will help developers that like to obsess over those things, and will almost certainly in some way incentivize people to do even more crazy things to try and increase their number of views that they get. In a weird way, much like YouTubers, I guess video game developers are out there trying to get as many views in front of their store pages as possible, in the hopes that that will bring up sales. One more and then I can start playing the regular deck, and maybe even try to play a little ranked. It's not like we've gotten very high in ranked. More than even Hearthstone, by far, Magic takes so much of your time doing side stuff that you can't just play ranked and get it done. Part of that definitely is the fact that I could have built a druid deck in Hearthstone that wins fairly well and not had to change that druid deck for a year or two. Where in Magic, you kind of need to build a new red deck or blue deck or any color deck every time there's a new expansion for it to even maintain playability, which definitely makes it a annoying experience, a more arduous experience trying to just have decks that would work as far as getting daily quests done and playing ranked. Because if I was trying to play ranked right now with this green test deck, I would fall down in rank quite a bit. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. Sales up at Nintendo due to significant growth across the entire Switch family, which that's not surprising. What will be surprising, I think, is over the course of the next 12 months, what is going to be the main system sellers for the Switch, particularly now that either everybody has a Switch that wants a Switch, or nobody can get a new Switch if they wanted a Switch because of the pandemic. Like, I don't know if there's any major software coming out this year for the Switch, and so there was a bit of a complaint of a slow lineup when the Switch initially launched. Then it eventually got Odyssey and Zelda, and now it has the other Zelda game, and it's got a lot of third-party games, so now it does have a decent lineup, but it may now become stagnant again. And if this was a normal time, having two different periods in your console's life when the launches become stagnant would almost certainly be a system killer. But that may not be the case this time. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Killer Queen Arcade Fire Map controversy addressed by the developers. I have no idea what this is. I assume this is Killer Queen, which is related to that game Killer Queen Black. Maybe they made an arcade thing. Custom arcade mods shut down. The Killer Queen Arcade Fire Map controversy has been addressed by the developer on Reddit, highlighting it. Here's a bit of background. Killer Queen is an arcade platformer game with a theme of bees and hives. It makes for pretty intense platformers. I didn't know it was in arcades. And it seems to like quite a few people are really enjoying this game. However, some modders took things to the next level by tinkering with the machine and creating a custom map. See, can we mutate on top of this guy? I don't think we can. Sorry, I went quiet there. However, some mods took things to the next level by tinkering with the machine and creating a custom map. The developers ultimately didn't like this and had it shut down, as explained. Here, there's a quote. I think a lot of people don't understand that our business model is different. We often find ourselves in uncharted territory. Unlike many game companies, our customers are not necessarily our players. But that is definitely not a statement you want to say out loud and be heard saying. The end user is not the customer, which means that their customer is the publisher or somebody else. And then the question is, who is the real customer in that case? Is this a creature? This is a creature. Interesting. See how this is all just like scrubbed out? There should be a better system than that. Okay. I don't know if those mutates were really worth doing there, but that seems like that worked fairly well. So yeah, they I guess shut down that. There is another story of Nintendo sending out massive DMCA like cease and desist letter style barrage on the PC port of Mario 64. So what does that really tell you? Anything? I mean, it seemed fairly obvious that was what was going to happen, and it doesn't really seem like that means that Nintendo is even 1 inch closer to ever porting games like Mario 64 to PC. They just are doing their standard copyright protection, and I wouldn't even in this case call it a overreach of protecting your copyright, since the entire game is being ported and released for free, and Mario 64 really doesn't, a PC version in particular of Mario 64 really doesn't fall into the category of what I would even stretch to call abandonware, considering there's been so many re-releases of that game fairly recently. Like, it hasn't been 4 or 5 years since some Mario 64 something has been released somewhere. So yeah, the odds were pretty much zero that the PC port of Mario 64 was going to be allowed to stay up, even if it did inspire Nintendo to make their own port and sell it. It very well may have done that. I guess if you really thought anything was going to affect their decisions that they've probably long since already made. The idea that that port is out there and that maybe other ports will come out, that might slightly change their opinion if they're just constantly having to spend money on lawyers to take down PC ports of old Nintendo games or even new Nintendo games. They might eventually just go, look, it's not worth it for us to deny the fans what they want, which is obviously some PC ports of these games, and it might just be easier to port them to computers, port them to PC anyways. But a lot of that is going to have to do with the attitude of the people in charge of Nintendo, and it would be weird if you convinced somebody to do something by irritating them and just constantly doing something that they don't want to do. Not saying that strategy won't work, it's just not the ideal strategy that you want to take if you can avoid it. Although there are definitely some people that only respond to certain situations certain ways, and maybe just berating Nintendo with PC ports of their games is the only way to get them to move to PC. Nintendo would be a very interesting company if they did start putting their games on PC and then they started making something that was a Switch-like device that ran an i86 processor and was effectively a computer. They probably would do it better than the Steam Link did. Let's see. Okay. Are we ready to attack? I don't think we need to yet. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called WC, as in Water Closet. This is an infinite runner where you're trying to run to the toilet and you have to, I suppose, go through the right door, or maybe you get to choose your next run. It's weird that there's like this blood stain on the wall. That seems weird. And as an infinite runner, it's $1.99. It's English only. It's 13 achievements. It's probably an achievement game. Looks like it might have some secrets to surprise people with. The game might change somewhat as you play it further, as kind of a joke game. But I think I've played enough of these joke games at this point in my career, and I don't really feel like this is one that's gonna do anything big and different. Alright, let's do this. I may have lost here. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, we have a game on Steam called Infinite Beyond the Mind, which has some interesting drawing. This would look good if this was like an 80s PC game, but it's kind of rough in 2020. It looks like it is a beat 'em up game, kind of arcade in style. Looks like it's a little bit too just pixel graphic-y to be interesting. $7.99, English and a bunch of other languages. You know what, I'll be a little generous here. The price is a little too high, but not that high. I'll see if people like this for some reason, and then come back and decide. And here we go. Now we just need to activate this, and we have victory. Probably could have just activated that and I would have had victory anyways, now that I look at it. There we go. Tier up. Tier up in rank. Silver tier 1. As long as we spend a decent amount of time, we should get up the gold tier. I'd like to get up to platinum tier this month, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't. And we are getting to kind of a dangerous position where my one deck that is actually decently good might be getting long in the tooth. So I'm gonna have to figure out some other deck. Once we lose Bola Citadel from standard, once we lose Witch's Oven and things like that, that's gonna be a problem. Even Blight Beetle is one that's gonna leave. Like Bola Citadel and Witches in these are all, I think, Throne of Eldraine, but Blight Beetle is a core 20, so if we don't get a core 21 reprint of something like Blight Beetle, I'm gonna have to replace at least that card. Tech Raptor has an article. Madden NFL 21 won't support the smart delivery option, opting instead for its own system. Smart delivery was the thing announced by Xbox for the Xbox Series X to make sure you get the right version based on the console you have. What it effectively means is that you buy the game once, or at least it's implying that you will buy the game once, and then if you have an Xbox Series X, you get like the best quality. But if you only have an Xbox One X or an Xbox One S or an Xbox One plain, then you'll get different versions based on that with lower resolution textures and taking up less room. So it really is just versioning, and in the Linux world you certainly run into a lot of that, where it's here's the version of the software for the AMD 64 base code, here's the 32-bit version of the Linux, here's the ARM version of the code to run on cell phones, and there's several other chipsets that you potentially could support. And versioning isn't completely idiot-proof in Linux by any means, because then you, on top of having versions for the base of the source code that you then would have to build the source code yourself from, in a lot of cases, you have app repositories based on what version of what flavor of Linux you have installed. So if you have Ubuntu, you'll get special versions for Ubuntu compared to just the base version that you'd have to build from source code. And it is way more difficult to build something from source code than it is to just install it from the App Store in the Ubuntu or the Debian distros, Debian repositories. Those are fairly easy to install things from. But a lot of times some software doesn't work or doesn't exist in the repositories, or it's a very old version of the software because that's the latest version of the software that's been tested to a certain level of quality. And a lot of times it is better just to have the older version of the software than to try to have the newest version of the software and then find out it's buggy. and a pain to use. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Nightwalker, which looks like you're running around kind of an asset flip horror forest, but sort of playing as a monster yourself from the looks of it. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe you're playing as a human. It feels like you should be playing as a human in any kind of horror game like this. But yeah, these enemies are just going to constantly run towards you. Yeah, it doesn't look particularly unique. $3.59, English only, third-party EULA, for no good reason there. Like, I'd really like to see the justification for any of these games to have a third-party EULA.
Sweetest ingredient. Terror lurks among us.
This guy's gonna be annoying, isn't he? I've got nothing I can really do. Here we go. Play. Play. Next. Attack. Here. So Microsoft did have that big conference. I'm gonna go ahead and just sacrifice this, because sacrificing this will give me a food token that I can sacrifice later. And that actually helped me. That foolishly helped me play one more card. So Gematsu has an article. Microsoft has announced that over 140 studios are working on the Xbox Series X. Hundreds of titles are already in development, which I feel like this is a big old picture that they've built of just every studio that they have any relationship whatsoever with, and all of these companies, I imagine, just are saying, yeah, sure, we're making our games to run on Xbox Series X, because there's basically no difference between that and making the game run on the Xbox One X anyways. So it really is no skin off their teeth to say that they're working on games. When you see the number 150, it becomes a little bit daunting in the fact that theoretically that means over the next 4 years or so, there are 150 different games coming out for the Xbox Series X, but a significant number of those will get canceled, get delayed, or will just be games that you personally won't want to play, or they'll be really short games. So it's not like 150 AAA games that are going to be system sellers are coming out for the Xbox Series X. If anything, I think you should look at history and see that the Xbox One as a system itself really didn't have as good of a experience as good of a lineup as it should have. Feel like there was room for improvement there. Yeah, Gematsu has the full list here of the companies, and this list is probably more interesting in that there are names here that you probably wouldn't recognize, like Bugbear Entertainment. I couldn't tell you what they did. Coatsink, I don't think I've even heard of. Coffee Stain Publishing, where you didn't have things like Deep Silver, Digital Devolver, Don't Nod, those are names we definitely recognize. EA, certainly. Gaijin Entertainment, never heard of that. THQ Nordic, obviously. You know what I want to see, though, is a company that Microsoft owns. Let's see. Double Fine Productions. It's not here. Double Fine Productions, owned by Microsoft, not listed in this list. Interesting. Interesting that there is more to realize in what is not said than what there is being said in that, I think. Double Fine Productions either skipped as a way of not looking like they were just advertising their own thing, or skipped because Double Fine Productions is no longer, as far as Microsoft's is concerned, a independent company that even exists. Which, if that is the case, then the next question one should ask, can we do this? Is Microsoft Studios themselves listed in this list? No, Microsoft Studios is also not listed in the list. So they can make the argument that they just didn't list themselves to buff the numbers up. Which, fair enough. I get that. Do I have enough to win yet? No. Still a little short. Because I can't attack. I'm too short, but then that is not going to be an issue. I see the beginning of the end, by the way. We have been going for about 2 hours now. And I'm glad to report that I haven't really felt sick, so now I'm just hitting the standard problem of my chair being uncomfortable after 2 hours of sitting in it. And yeah, I'm starting to feel that. Let's see. Do 2 more and then we can just sacrifice and do 10 damage. And we actually will be in such a nice position that even if we sacrifice everything here, we'll still be fairly fine. Because we could get more health if something went wrong. We could bring these guys back onto the field with the food tokens. Silver tier 1, good. This may be our last game if we play it well and actually succeed, and then that would leave me with up to 10 more games. We've got the weekend done well, but it really wouldn't hurt for me to play on Saturday and Sunday and try and get 15 wins also, just to get the mastery levels up and just to get more cards. Moving on, we have have a Gamma Sutra article. The Capybara Games co-founder Nathan Vella is now at Annapurna Interactive, taking an unmentioned seat on the executive team and lending his expertise of the companies with independent game developers. The game companies mentioned here, though, I'm not 100% sure what they're working on recently. I've seen Capybara Games before, and apparently they made Grindstone, which is not a game I even remember, and he left last September, and it's been since last September to this point that he's announced where his new job is, which is almost, I'd say 6 weeks, a little bit over 6 weeks, but not 6 months. So maybe, let's see, well, 3 months from September would be, no, it's been 6 months. It's been over 6 months, so he probably just had something in his contract, a non-compete for 6 months, and then took this new job officially 6 months later. Those non-compete clauses really need to be made illegal, but that's an argument for another time. Well, free victories, I will definitely gladly take those. Now, Annapurna Interactive, what are they making? Let's see. If we look at their Wikipedia, the games Annapurna Interactive made was What Remains of Edith Finch, Flower, Gregorio, Donut County, Gone Home, Ashen, Telling Lies. I don't know if these are just things that they published or if these were all what they made. Sayonara Wild Hearts, Kentucky Route Zero. Yeah, okay. Seems like there's several games coming out this year under Annapurna Interactive's title. So Annapurna seems like they are building themselves up to be more of a middle tier developer slash publisher instead of being a small indie company, which is what they felt like when Gone Home and What Remains of Edith Finch were released. And I don't think I hate Annapurna Interactive. I think I'm confusing them perhaps in my mind with the developers of Firewatch, which I think is a different company, and I don't think the developers of Firewatch as a company really exist anymore, since at least one of the people that worked at that company now works in Valve. Moving on, the atmospheric first-person horror game Scorn adds an Xbox Series X version. We're going to get a lot of that, of games just adding Xbox Series X versions. This probably isn't YouTube family friendly, this trailer, and Scorn is like the game that was the comparison to Agony, or the counterpart to the game Agony, and has just been in development. There may even be a third game that looks like this, just very bloody, very hellish and demonic, a lot more H.R. Giger in Scorn. What I'm seeing right now is a very phallic imagery, very, very sexually suggestive imagery in a H.R. Giger monstrous style. I'm seeing a stomach that's like black and transparent. Yeah, I don't even think this is the game I was thinking of. Either that or I've changed the way things look quite a bit. But I think from what I've heard, Scorn has been in development since 2014 also, so So we're talking 6 years of development hell. This game is probably not going to be anything. If anything, Agony might have been the smarter developer. And it is, I guess, also worth mentioning that there is that Succubus game that they announced about a year ago in that same mentality. I don't know if I really believe that an H.R. Giger hell representation, just hardcore heavy metal style of games, can be a category where a game like that is released every couple of years. It probably should be. I just don't know if people are going to be in the mentality to it. A lot like heavy metal music, there are heavy metal fans, and then there's everybody else. There may just not be enough of a fan base for things like Agony and Scorn, even if they were good games, which Agony really wasn't a good game, and it was quite the disappointment. And so one can only hope that they don't make the same mistakes that Madhead did when publishing Agony. Moving on, the sci-fi action RPG game The Ascent has been announced for Xbox Series X, Xbox One, and PC. All of these were announced during the presentation, which wasn't very good. And yeah, this looks kind of like a sci-fi game. I don't know what a better description or no, but it's probably just a top-down twin-stick shooter in a sci-fi universe, and the story will be either good or bad, and the gameplay will be either good or bad, and those two elements may not really connect to each other much at all. It probably would take a lot more hype and a lot more details about that game to get me particularly interested in it.
Let us fight.
Let's see. Oh, I should have used that, and I didn't. Well, we'll attack here.
I will consume you.
Well, that didn't work. So let's try and bring somebody back. Next, we have a game on Steam called So May It Be, a witch dating simulator, which seems like it's a low-effort
What an interesting creature.
visual
Let's
novel.
see how you work.
I suspect this is probably a Chinese effort, although it could be just a really ugly MS Paint looking Western game. $10.19 discounted. That's really expensive, English only. Yeah, really bad looking. And I would throw out there, why would one specifically want to date a witch? What is the properties inherent to being a witch that makes them attractive? There certainly are a lot of stories where there are witches out there with magical powers, and certainly that's it. But when you think about I Dream of Jeannie as a comparison, even though she was a genie, or the other one where the man was married to a witch, both of those sitcoms revolved around the idea of the husbands not wanting their wives to use magical powers to make things easier or to expose them to ridicule for the witches exposing themselves as being witches in worlds that would not be acceptable with that. There's, particularly in dating simulators, there's personalities, and I guess maybe you could try to set a personality as a stereotypical personality to a witch, but kind of, I don't know what personality you would set to that would be recognizable as kind of a trope or a stereotype. Like, it doesn't really make sense. And sure, people having power is always nice, but if you're dating for power, you're doing it wrong. So
Some lessons for you
yeah.
all.
I guess perhaps if people have a fetish, that might explain making a dating simulator where you're dating exclusively witches. It does kind of fall into like that Dream Daddy dating simulator where the main selling point on the title is that you're dating fathers, but as you get deeper into the game, you I assume run into people with personalities that are different. I guess the same could be done for a witch game. I'm gonna lose here. He's just gonna wreck me. Next we have a game on Steam called Wavy the Rocket, which seems like it's kind of like a Flappy Bird concept, but instead you're changing the wavelength frequency that this ship flies on. This probably is incredibly fidgety to play this, but it is definitely a different style of gameplay, and there's a decent amount of polish here visually. This isn't just a low effort game. Now maybe this is more of something that should have been a mobile game, or maybe people will report back that this game is really difficult amongst its 80 levels. 80 levels is not a bad number. But I'm going to follow this. $16.99 discounted is too expensive, and English only seems kind of ridiculous. It also seems to have some mini games. So, yeah. I see some things I like there.
Watch this.
This sucks. I cannot do anything at all
Listen
to
to
take
them
this guy
roar.
down with 1 health creatures.
Behold.
Moving on, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 adds a Series X, Xbox Series X version and PS5 version. And the trailer has like this puppet-like creature being controlled by a vampire. I don't know if this is YouTube family friendly as a trailer either. I didn't watch the presentation, so like I really am at the point where it's just more efficient in your timeline to have other people report on these presentations, and then if they turn out to actually have a lot of details in it, then maybe you go back and look at it. So it seems like the main theme of this trailer for Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines is dancing, and at the end it shows some fighting, and at the beginning it shows what seems like a crazy vampire that's hanging people up like marionette puppets in a grotesque way. The art, I would say, for Vampire the Masquerades could be improved a little bit. It's does kind of feel a year to 3 behind what a modern like face scan models could do. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article. Second Extinction announced at Inside Xbox. So a game called Second Extinction apparently is coming out. You're going to a planet and you're shooting dinosaurs. Okay. Interesting. I suppose somewhat interesting. Is this where that Dragon Games technology is finally going to end up? Dragon Scale that Microsoft canceled. It's being developed by Systemic Reaction out of southern Sweden. So that's not a Microsoft studio, so it's probably not Scalebound or Scaleborn, whatever that game was called. Technology. Gamatsu has an article. Yakuza Like a Dragon adds Xbox Series X, Xbox One, and PC versions for the Western release. Available day one on all platforms. We had seen the PC listing leaked out already, so we kind of knew that. And I guess there was a slight question if it was going to come to the Xbox Series, but instead of just being PlayStation exclusives, but that has now been confirmed. It will be up to the next move as far as the PlayStation lineup to see how many games are actually PlayStation exclusives. I don't think in this presentation any game, or at least too many games, maybe one game, said it was going to be an Xbox exclusive. I don't think that they're really buying exclusives this time around. I don't think Microsoft cares. I think they feel like the Xbox Series X will outsell and outperform the hardware, and it's not worth their money to invest into paying people for exclusives. And frankly, PlayStation is doing a bad job of keeping people to be loyal and exclusive on the PlayStation anyways. Which again just loops back to the idea of we'll have to see in the next major presentation of Sony how many of those games are exclusive and how many of those exclusives are actually worth caring about. Next, Gematsu has an article. Bright Memory Infinite adds an Xbox Series X version. This is the game allegedly being made by one person in China that looks really, really good. Far too good for a single person to be making it. There is like a DeLorean in this trailer, and there's definitely more just being shown here. There is also a danger, though, that this is the next Yandere Simulator game. Like, the fact that, particularly here, that they've added this DeLorean car. That, like, this developer may be making vertical slices and demos of things, but he may be incapable of actually making a full story, a full game, or anything that actually could be sold. And at a certain point, even now, the fact that he's still a single person working on the game seems ridiculous. He should have gotten a lot more. Like the demo now has him in like a spaceship activating a warp drive as a teaser. So there's like, it really does seem like it's just going all over the place, and people should not get their hopes up. Best thing that could ever happen to that is that he would get hired, or he would get funded to make his own company, and even that's kind of dangerous he'd get a lot more people working for him. He did, and they'd admit that a lot more people were working for him, because the selling point of this is a game that was developed by one person. It worked. It got people's attention. It was great, but now it's time to be true to the realistic nature of making AAA video games. Your game looks like a AAA video game. You want to sell it as a AAA video game. You need help. You need a team. You need probably a publisher to fund you. One would wish that wasn't the case. One would wish that the Chinese government would care about video games in general and give a grant. That would be nice if all governments just granted artists of all types to create art. And that might help a little bit. It still doesn't solve the problem of the deadline. Even if it solves the problem of funding, he still needs people to help him just to make sure he gets this done in time. Otherwise, we're going to see bright memory trailers throughout the entire lifetime of the Xbox Series X, and it very possibly will still not come out. Let's see. Moving on, Bandai Namco announces an RPG called Scarlet Nexus for the Xbox Series X, Xbox One, PS4, 5, and PC. It looked a little bit like Astral Chain, a RPG, action RPG, where they're fighting some kind of magical plant-like creatures. That they seem like they are perhaps more figments of imagination more than anything, just almost like personas, and so you're doing a lot of hacking and slashing. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a fairly similar to Persona action game. They're called Psionic Warriors. Yeah, so they're people's nightmares effectively is what I think you're going to be fighting. Yeah, it sounds like some standard anime nonsense. I say that lovingly, but Bandai Namco, it could be good, it could be bad. A lot of them, the Bandai games, turn out to not be that great or not that well received outside of Japan, anyways. Next, we have a game on Steam called Resolution, which is tagged as pixel graphics and sci-fi. Does look like pixel graphics. Does like a top-down twin-stick shooter, and then the trailers seem to have somewhat interesting art, if any of that would actually play. I'll be generous and put this on the fall list. It's not out yet. It's got a bunch of languages. But at the current moment, the only thing it's really selling itself on was that one thumbnail art. And I guess since it's not out yet, I'm not going to bother to put it on the fall list yet. Somebody must have linked to that. Gamatsu has Dirt 5 being announced for the PS5, Series X, PS4, Xbox One, PC, and Stadia. We've gotten to the point where it's far too many lists, and I am going to have to start just saying Dirt 5 has been announced for all these platforms, because that's getting ridiculous. Even if we just drop it down to PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and Stadia, that's still too long of a list. Dirt 5 is slightly interesting. It just kind of depends on whether this is going to be a good Dirt game or a bad Dirt game. They seem to swing back and forth between being good and bad. And we'll have to see if the developers of Dirt decide to do something nasty like they've done in the past and remove Dirt 4 from being on sale, or like remove the music because they don't want to free up the licenses for the old Dirt games. The I still think that Dirt 3 is probably the best Dirt game to get, and the only Dirt game you really need to get if you need to get any of them. And there may just be better rally car racing or just racing games in general to offer on Steam that I just haven't found. See, next we have a game that's a bunch of Asian characters, and it's in MAVR 3D, and this looks like PlayStation 2 era 3D graphics of some hack and slash fighting from kind of an awkward over the shoulder perspective. I don't really think that's how I'd want to do sword fighting. It may be slightly realistic as to what you would see if you were sword fighting, but if you're going to do that, you might as well just put it in first person perspective. And yeah, the graphics look terrible. It's free to play. It's English and Chinese. No surprise there. This definitely looks like a Chinese game. And a game like that I don't think would even sell on a cell phone. So I don't know why it's made in the first place. Next we have Deadly Premonition, Understanding Sweary's Insanity, a feature from TechRaptor. So if you wanted to try to understand Deadly Premonition more, maybe you'd read this after you've played the game. But I could give you the boilerplate explanation. Watch Twin Peaks, realize that you don't understand Twin Peaks and nobody understands Twin Peaks, then filter what you saw from Twin Peaks into the mindset of somebody who's a little bit crazy and decide to make a video game, and then you have Deadly Premonition. Or you just take Deadly Premonition on its surface value and just enjoy what you see and don't try to understand it too much, and you could probably have a decent experience that way also. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Bloober Team announces the psychological horror game The Medium for Xbox X and PC. Creepy image here. Again, this might not be safe for YouTube family friendliness, so I won't show you the trailer. Plus also Content ID, false DMCA claims. And I'm seeing the stomach being scanned like that game Cayenne. Cayne, C-A-Y-N-E. In fact, this might be the exact same footage from the exact same company. Bloober Team, this may be the third game in like a trilogy, although that wouldn't really make sense. So the pregnant woman's was getting ultrasounded, and then it jumped to the future and showed the woman a lot older, and now she's like flashing back into pregnancy and stabbing herself or something. She's like hallucinating and going into different realities. So maybe the woman is the medium and she's seeing different worlds. There's definitely like a dust world that's being shown here, a nightmarish type world, much like Cayenne and Stasis both seemed like they were going to be. Although this game, The Medium, is full 3D, not a top-down looking game. So if it is supposed to be the third game in that series, they are making a drastic change in kind of the gameplay style and the amount of animation being made. Now I'm seeing a girl in like a leather jacket investigating things. So alright, The medium looks slightly interesting, but it will, like a lot of the horror games, boil down to the reception and the actual gameplay, because it's not too hard to make a decent trailer for even a really short, really boring game. TechRaptor has an article here. Scarlet Nexus battles otherworldly creatures in a sci-fi city. This was a game that Bandai Namco announced. So that was a duplicate article. There's a decent number of people, games that were announced at this presentation. Part of the problem with the Xbox presentation is I think they implied that they were going to talk about the hardware more on the Xbox Series X. Not that I think there's really much more to be said about the hardware. I mean, it is what it is, and I don't think they're going to announce anything new. They're not going to announce a price. I don't think either one will announce a price until very, very close to its launch time. TechRaptor has an article. Chorus reveal trailer shows a sci-fi dog fighting. Now, they're calling it Chorus, C-H-O-R-U-S. This looks like a V to me in the logo, but it would then be pronounced Corvus. It's a sci-fi dogfighting game. Typically, I don't like space shoot-around games. There might be something if they put a lot of polish on this and there's just a lot of feedback saying Chorus actually is good that would push me to play it. It would certainly be a nice little starting point on those style of games to say I'll give it a try and see if I can learn to love those kinds of games that I've mostly dismissed and just hated just by the way they look and the way they've played in the previous decades. But I also wouldn't be surprised if it's not particularly well received and people just kind of ignore it. They should have activated this on that instead of letting him frogify that. This is gonna get me with Godzilla. Play. So the only way I win here is with the 12 life. Can I pull out a miracle? And I think I might have pulled out a miracle. Seriously, he countered my target spell. Well, attack with everything. We'll see if that helps us a little bit. Here Gamma Sutra has the article I talked about earlier. Nintendo files lawsuit barrage to take down Super Mario 64 PC port. Torrent Freaks is reporting, and I imagine there are just they are just file sharing that port all over the place. I didn't look very hard to find it, but I did take note that none of the mainstream video game sites were linking directly to the PC port. And for me as a video game critic, it doesn't really help me one bit to have the PC version of it and play it. If I was going to try to make coverage of Nintendo games and not have that claimed by Nintendo doing via Content ID, I would still be way better off plugging in a capture card and plugging in a Nintendo 64 and just playing the original hardware and the original content, because that would be much fairer and better at criticism. It's weird to try to criticize some fan-made port that actually improves or makes the gameplay differently. I don't know what I'm then making some weird hybrid criticism on the work that was done to make the game versus the work that was done to change the game in this derivative work that would be the PC port. And there really isn't any real reason to criticize Mario 64. People who know it exists, which are most gamers, probably know that it's a game worth playing at least once in your life, and there really doesn't need to be any more coverage than that. Even Nintendo fans that love to play Nintendo games don't tend to go back and play Mario 64 in particular that often. They instead choose to seek out other games, Zelda games, things that tell a little bit more of a story and do things a little bit differently, have more replayability to them. Might be able to win here. Might being the operative word. So if I hit this, put that. Actually, let's put that on the field first, and then that on the field first. I think I might have a victory here, because if I do this, do I need more people? And do I want to risk more people? I guess it's 1 for 1. So you eat this like that. You do this. You can play that. We can take that action. Then that is a free play. And then that's a free play. Do we have a victory here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that should be 18 damage. And 10. And I should have sacrificed this and gone in a loop too, but I don't need it. So this should do 18 damage first, and then we got an extra 10 from Bola Citadel. We have defeated Godzilla with our deck, with 11 extra damage to spare. And that should put us at gold. Gold tier 4, and I think that is a good point to just not start another game, because we still have a little bit of news here, but I just want to burn through it. And yeah, I need like 2 more victories. So here we have a game on Steam called About Love, Hate, and the Other Ones 2. This is a weirdly titled kind of co-op platforming game. The question I guess to ask would be, was the first game any good? There's a bunch of language support here. It's discounted to $7.49. Black Pants Studio. Let's go to see this game. This is rated very positively, and it's on my wish list. So I think, based on that concept, it seems like the first game was more of a flat platforming strategy game. guess that means that the sequel should be on the fall list. You do get into this weird position where the wish list may have 2 or 3 games in a series before you actually get around to buying any of them or trying any of them. TechRaptor has an article here. WizKids reveal WWE headlock paper and scissors, which seems like it might be a real world tabletop game, not a digital game. Yeah, this is a real world tabletop game. That's why I didn't recognize the publisher. Gamasutra has this blog from 2020. I don't know why there's a blog from right now talking about the artificial intelligence of fear with goal-oriented planning. I would argue that particularly in the first Fear game, those AIs weren't particularly great. They may have been great for the time, and there definitely was something about Fear that made it a lot more popular than it feels like it should have been. And yeah, these guys would run away from you if you threw a grenade, and they would scream out and yell at each other, and they would try to group up. So they definitely did have more AI than I imagine the average first-person shooter is. My main problems with playing Fear 1, having played it recently, is it is just a super ugly, repetitive graphically speaking area with basically 2, maybe 3 locations, and then it has a weird, confusing storyline, and it tries to be a horror game where it is also a first-person shooter, which makes very little sense, because then at any point it feels like you could shoot the creepy, scary girl, Alma, and you should be able to win, but you really can't do that, or you can't do it except for maybe in one section where it's programmed that you can do that. So you get these horrific images that just break up the flow of the action experience when you're playing the shooting part of it, and then you have the shooting aspect action parts that break up the horrific elements. So it's 2 different moods are trying to be established at all times, and they just conflict with each other non-stop. And the action part, as far as the game, is very generic. Maybe there's something in Fear 2 and Fear 3 that brings the game up. I think Fear 2 is probably the favored one there. But it really does feel like, since they created a game called Condemned Criminal Origins, which was a very good scary game, feels like all the scary elements in Fear were leftover concepts from that game, and they really, for the Fear series, just wanted to make a shooter, and it probably would have been better if it was just a shooter. Anyways, moving on, we have a game on Steam here called My Sweet Confessions, which looks like it might be a Western visual novel concept. Seems like you're cooking confections, and thus a pun being made here. But this drawing's not particularly good, unless you're going to try and make an argument that this badly emulated early 90s anime style is now some new Western style. I don't know if I would buy that. This is $2.99, so the price is right, at least, and it's English full audio, theoretically. But it has only 14,000 words, which is pretty short. And it's not selling itself as having any adult content, which probably convinces a lot of people to stay away from these types of games. This feels very much like a game trying to get played on something like Game Grumps, compared to something that was trying to be a good product. And the only other game we have here is called Electric Dream. It came out in February, and it has only one review, and the graphics here also look particularly bad. So yeah, I just don't see any quality there, so that won't be making the fall list. TechRaptor has this interesting article. Half-Life 2 Remastered listing was found on Steam. There is a high chance, though, that this is somebody joking, putting Half-Life 2 Remastered. The idea of it being a mod and then Valve being okay with it, such as the way that Black Mesa is a mod to remaster Half-Life 1, is definitely believable. It would probably be better if the people who made Black Mesa made the mod to improve and remaster Half-Life 2, since they've now proven that they can do it at some level of quality and in some amount of time. It would be definitely a lot better though if Valve just did it themselves, but of course we can't wait for that to happen, because it never will. If I am ever going to cover the Half-Life series, it would be a lot nicer to be able to play Black Mesa and then play Half-Life 2 remastered, instead of playing Black Mesa and then having to play Half-Life 2 in its original format. And whatever Half-Life 2 you're actually even talking about there, because I still haven't really gotten if Half-Life 2 is the same as Half-Life 2 Episode 1 or Half-Life 2 Episode 2 ever came out, or if those are separate things completely. Gamma Sutra had the same article that the Tokyo Game Show was canceled, so nothing there that needs to be repeated. We have a game on Steam here called Mercenaries VR that looks like it's a VR first-person shooter. It does have a decent amount of polish, and I guess we have yet to see a player versus player VR shooter. This is $9.99, which isn't too expensive for VR. It does seem like it's single player only though, and it's English, Russian, and German. I want to give this one a chance because this is kind of where it needs to go, with the exception of things like Half-Life Alyx. I haven't really found any great first-person shooters that were in VR that made sense. Next, we have a game called Fury Unleashed, which is rated very positively. It looks like it's a platforming shooter game with some RPG elements. It's a unique art style. I'm not sure I really love the art style, but it looks like it might be something. $17.99 is really expensive though, and a whole bunch of languages. And this might be a little bit too much of a bullet hell shooter. It definitely feels like a Contra style game with some roguelike elements. Apparently it's already on my fall list, so I'll just leave it there and think about it some more. We already talked about that one. Next, we have a game on Steam called EIRA, E-I-R-A, Echoes of Adventure. It looks like it's a first-person shooter in an ice place, but I'm not seeing any enemies or anything. Are you using the gun to move and manipulate things and not shoot and kill things, apparently? That makes it questionable how much actual content is unique here. Like, I played the Turing test, and that was part of my problem with the Turing test, is that you had this gun to solve all the puzzles, and it really didn't make sense that you were solving the puzzles this way with a gun. This game is free, and it's English only, so Is this a student project? Yeah. I'm going to put this on the follow list because I think this is a student project. That would explain some roughness around this. It would explain the weirdness around the gun that seems to just suck elements up. So we'll see what the response is on a free student project or what I think is a student project. It very well may not be a student project. And at a certain point, what's the difference between a student project and a project from just a newly established company with new to the video game programming working world? There really isn't too much of a difference there. It really does. The fact that I give special preference to student projects really does speak to a bit of a snobbishness in my mind that says that somebody who graduates immediately from computer programming can't go and start their own company and be a business. They have to go and work for the man somewhere, effectively. And unfortunately, that's kind of the truth, though. Like, you can't really start your own company, not without hiring a bunch of people that are older than you and more qualified than you, and then it's going to be really hard to gain their respect. Next, we have a bunch of Asian letters in a game in Survivor Spark as the title. It's a top-down twin-stick shooter game in like a space base. It looks pretty asset flippy and ridiculous. It's early access for $4.99, English and Chinese. Nothing here interests me. Looks a little bit like Smash TV, but if I'm going to cover anything like Smash TV, I'll just cover Smash TV. Next, Variety has an article here, if we can get rid of pop-ups. Death Stranding sweeps the gaming's GANG awards with 6 wins, including Audio of the Year. I've never heard of gaming's GANG awards, so this apparently is a new award thing. Game Audio Network Guild, apparently. So, Audio of the Year was Death Stranding. There was a bunch of other competitors. Music of the Year was Jedi Fallen Order, which, now that that's been successful enough, they are saying was the beginning of a series, which kind of no surprise to anybody. Several games here I don't immediately remember or recognize, but take note that Borderlands 3 did not get Audio of the Year, did not get Music of the Year, Sound Design of the Year. Nobody liked Borderlands 3. Best Cinematic Cutscene Audio. It almost makes genius sense that an audio guild would give out their own awards, because audio is often just so underemphasized in most forms of media. So, like, best dialogue also going to Death Stranding. What I would like to see is if they have an award for best surround sound, because that is not pushed either. Best original instrumental came from a song called Know Thyself from Flavorworks. Or the game is called Know Thyself from Flavorworks. Best music for an indie game was Bee Simulator. Best sound design for a casual social game was Call of Duty Mobile. Best sound design for an indie game was Deliver Us to the Moon. Best music for casual social game was Honor of Kings 2.0 and Erica. Best original choral composition was Fallen Order. And best original song was from League of Legends. Death Stranding gets best soundtrack. 100 Unusual Novel Surprising Ways to Be a Better Sound Designer is the best game audio publication. So I guess this is the book to read if you want to learn to be better at making audio. Best audio mix went to Call of Duty Modern Warfare and Death Stranding. Best virtual reality went to Journey of the Gods. Chrono Trigger got the best game music cover remix. And People's Choice went to Cadence of Hyrule. And then apparently they gave some award to just the person who worked on the communications board of the award ceremony. And some other composers. Take note there were several listings of Borderlands 3 up for awards and didn't get any of them. That really sucks. I imagine 2K is not happy with the critical reception of Borderlands 3, or particularly even, I think, probably the sales. Next, we have a game on Steam called Close to the Sun. I think this has been in development and hyped for a while as a... Well, I keep thinking it's a space game, but it totally doesn't look like a space game. Every time I look at it, it looks more like a horror game. And it's tagged as a horror adventure. Already following, it's $14.99, bunch of languages, rated M for mature. I do want to go through the last five things. That way we don't have too many things left over from Monday, which probably wouldn't have been a problem anyways. Here we have a game called Lucid Dream. It's tagged as a horror mystery, and it looks kind of like a Korean point-and-click adventure horror game. It's free to play, and it's English only. So, that's weird. I kind of want to put it on the follow list, but it's a free-to-play game. So, I don't know what to do with these free-to-play games. Like, it's not like I have extra time to be criticizing games you could play now, but it is rated very positively. Probably is only about an hour or two of entertainment, but a good hour or two of entertainment. And right about now, I bet anybody willing to play a horror game would be happy for another horror game that took up an hour or two. Next, we have a game on Steam called Nightwalker, which looks like it's just a clone of Outrun. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's too much difference here between this and many other early racing arcade games. It's a shoot 'em up retro style racing game. There's a different game not called Outrun. I think it's called Spy Hunter. I think that this might be closer to that. Or just some of those on-rails shooters. Yeah, the problem with a game like this, though, is they were only interesting and fun when you were playing in an arcade and you had a steering wheel. It's $3.34 discounted, English only. It's not a terrible game if you have nostalgia for something similar to that, but you're really only going to have fun if there's a light gun to an arcade connected to a car driving arcade setup. Yeah. And even then, probably playing the old arcade games like that are a lot more fun. Although that'd probably be pretty expensive too, to buy one of those arcade machines and try and maintain it. Next, we have a game on Steam called Bakemono Demon Brigade Teimen Unit 01. That's a lot of either fake Japanese or Japanese. Kind of feels like it's probably not proper Japanese. And it looks like a two-hand shooter with maybe some Gundam and flying around type elements. Is this in VR? Yes. It's early access at $13.99. Has a third-party agreement. It's one player. Do I see enough here that would make me want to put this on the follow list? Because they're trying to bring you in with a lot of these flat images that would look absolutely terrible in 3D, and they look pretty terrible even in the demo. So I don't see enough polish here to make me believe this is going to be a Robotech mech style game that actually would work and be interesting. Yeah, I just can't buy what they're selling there. That seems unlikely to be good. Next, we have a game called Pushy and Pulley in Blockland, which seems like it's probably a Bomberman style game or box pushing style game. It is widescreen. I'll applaud it for that, and it looks cutesy and all, but these games aren't particularly that good. And $9.99, no discount, is asking quite a lot. English, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. Yeah. It just doesn't seem like it could possibly offer $10 worth of entertainment. And let's see. Last game we have on Steam is called Denial, which is a dark screenshot syndrome horror game, probably with some asset flip elements. And since every screenshot is just incredibly dark, I can easily reject it. It's discounted to $12.74. It's English only. And yeah, nothing more needs to be said about that. So then that brings me to the Humble Bundle, and while we are there, I will reload my Twitter feed, and we'll see if there's anything new on the Humble Bundles. Games bundles, play with friends is new. So we have Asmodee Digital Play with Friends. So pay $1 more, you get Small World, Karska Kone, Patchwork, King of the Assassins, Love Letter, and Potion Explosion. And I think to get Love Letter alone for $1 and Carcassonne, if you don't, Carcassonne, can't ever pronounce that right. I think for $1 that's a really good deal, because both of these tend not to sell for $1. And you are getting Steam accounts. If you pay more than the average of $10.14, you then start getting the DLC for Carcassonne, and that's when the game becomes a little bit better. So there's a slight good deal there. They're also throwing in some other games. Then if you just pay $12 or more, then you get Lord of the Rings Adventure Card Game Definitive Edition, more DLC for Carcassonne, and more for Splendor and Small Worlds. So what would really kill you is if you already had all of the Splendor game DLC or all of the Carcassonne DLC. And I think I don't. So I may end up spending $12 there. I'm not really in a position where I want to spend $12. Right about now, nobody wants to spend extra money. So that would be something nice if somebody wanted to spend $12 to give to charity and then give me all of those codes through Twitter direct message. That would be really nice. Let's see. They revealed the Xbox Series X boot sound. Major Nelson tweeted that out. Like, people really are going to care too much about that. Now looking at my Twitter feed to see if any bit of news came out. It is possible that there was some small announcement that I didn't catch from the Xbox presentation, but I kind of feel like we're pretty much done with news for the week. News is getting increasingly fewer and fewer announcements. There's the next historic in Magic Arena is going to come out, and at a certain point I probably should get historic section 2, but we'll wait until the last second. Historic Anthology 3 is coming out May 21st. Come on. Twitter doesn't want to agree with what I'm trying to click on. Instead, it wants to pop up a bunch of messages and hover over things. Yeah, we went long today. 3 hours and 30 minutes. Getting back to doing long shows. I don't particularly want to do long shows. It just takes that long. And certainly it takes longer to certainly get all the daily victories done. That is a big issue, certainly. But yeah, as I'm scrolling down through my Twitter feed, there's basically nothing that's happened. There's like one visual novel game that came out on Steam that has some younger looking characters. It's been kind of a long time since we've seen any younger looking characters at all, whether they were in a visual novel or any game, because of just the weird confusing message that Valve sent out that they basically didn't want any younger looking characters in games, regardless of anything, because there definitely were games that had no like implied lewdness or sexual content, or at least the creators were saying it had no implied lewdness and sexual content, and still those games were getting rejected because of the art style in which the characters were drawn, or because the characters were drawn younger looking, shorter, in more of a chibi art style. And that never really did get addressed. It just kind of got forgotten about. A lot of Valve's weird pro/anti-censorship actions, their inconsistency there has not been really addressed. It's just been dropped. Alright, well, that's going to be